if we know we're going to have some business a week, we should let the kind of the key person know for that meeting and see if they can attend. Not like inviting in at the last minute.
Yeah, fair enough. We'll make sure Moon is here. Do we want to have this conversation without Moon, or do we want to wait? We can do this another week, or I'm okay with either. But I thought we were gonna. Yeah, I should have messaged him, but we can talk about this today, or we can talk about something else. But I feel like this is one of the main things that's being discussed in the forum.
I guess I'm lost. What's the proposal?
Turning. Well, it's not a proposal; it's an idea. It's turning off the ghost bonding curve.
I think it makes sense to wait to have time for an organized discussion and have Moon be able to be at the front of that. So maybe we put off to next week. I mean, I think the general idea is to turn off the curve, use the DAI in the curve as the DAO, and then reduce our risk and exposure to DAI and try to be more capital efficient with all the DAI that's in the curve. But we should have an approach to it, and I know that Moon's put a ton of thought into it, so maybe we wait for him.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, we can wait.
Yeah, I agree. We should wait.
Okay.
So I'll just ask this. What's the negatives, Coder Dan, that you see in turning it off, if you see any?
There's a lot of discussion already on the forum. I don't really feel like it's a good use of the DAO's time right now to go over all that on a call.
Okay. I was just thinking.
There's a lot of discussion already. I think there's 100+ posts. So
very big then. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, it's a big thread. I'll link it down for you. Yeah, there it is. Okay, yeah, so we can table that for now. As far as old business proposals that have passed, we got the airdrop Gotchi respec potion has passed. And the consensus on that was that we're going to be, I guess we had this discussion last week that if it does pass, there was something we need to clarify in the distribution of it. So I don't know if people are still thinking it should be airdropped or whether there should be some sort of a cost or some sort of a different way to distribute them. But it has passed, so we will have Gotchi respec potions.
All right.
Yeah, well, we could definitely talk about that as well. Tommy Gotchi, I know there's some ideas accumulating about that around how spillover could be turned back on, even if for limited, limited intervals or what that interval would look like. If you want to come up and talk about that, you're certainly welcome to. As far as old business, we just had that Gotchi respec potion passed, so I don't think there is any other old business right now to cover. No open proposals. So yeah, I think we're free to talk about that if you want to come up and share that. Let me get you up here.
Coder Dan, your message about Dr. Wagme, let's go for it. I think this is the perfect time to do it.
I think it's, we're in the middle of this bear market and general market sentiment is not great. And the DAO members that we have right now in Gotchi Gang, like it's a kind of a critical time for us as a project. And one of the kind of the Maslow hierarchy needs of a DAO is you need to figure out how to fund people to do stuff that the DAO wants them to do. And I feel like we still haven't really figured that out in a sustainable, cohesive way. Like we have the DTF, which is funding some grants, which is kind of inbound, but we don't currently have any outbound needs that if the DAO wants to fund something, where it can put out a grant or like a bounty, and someone can take that up. We don't have a way to handle that kind of funding. So I think that is when you think about this, the respec potion, for example, the DAO has envisioned that and wants to implement it. It would be awesome if the DAO could also, if there were like community members that could write the code for that and submit it for review, and then we could review it and then deploy it, and that as more of like a finalized package for what it means for the DAO to create a proposal. That would just be one example, of a bounty that the DAO could put out instead of having to offload all of the development to the Pixelcraft team. Not that, I mean, we can handle it. It's just we probably shouldn't be handling it, especially as this DAO matures. We have
Hey Dan,
yep.
That makes sense, and we've talked about that in terms of the voting power for the snapshot as well. So the DAO wants to, takes a vote. Hey, we want to change voting power, and then it makes sense for the DAO to fund changing the snapshot queries as well. Would you put that one also in the same bucket as the potion?
Yeah, voting power is again something that even like legally, Pixelcraft shouldn't be telling the DAO what its voting power is. It would be awesome if the DAO knew how to do that. It's a skill set that the DAO could come up with, because there are coders in this DAO. Someone said the DAO isn't a coder group, but yeah, there are very technical people in the DAO, and especially in this space, if you want to have a DAO, you kind of need to have the technical side as well. So it totally makes sense, in my opinion, for the DAO to also have kind of a base of coders or designers or various team members in the community that are available for handling these kind of bounties.
I've discussed some of this a little bit with Dr. Wagme. Heard some of his ideas, and some of the talent I know you've identified in the community, Dr. Wagme, in terms of people who would be able to code specifically related to DAO infrastructure. But I wonder if that can also extend to maybe a larger group that is a bunch of technically adept, people who know how to do these sorts of things as a larger group, and as a resource pool for the DAO to draw on, and also compensate for the work that they're doing. So I wonder if there's potential there.
I was gonna say maybe we consider creating a program for coders similar to like the ambassador program, where we have a pool of coders that are in the DAO, that when the DAO needs something implemented, they can reach out to those coders, maybe make a server in the Discord, just so that we can organize that a little bit more.
I think to your point there, like you're asking like something be created and maintained and organized, prioritized and triaged, right? Like that's a fair bit of work. And I think one of our problems as a DAO right now is we're not doing a good job of seeing that leadership, like create an agenda, like what needs to get done, using DAO tools that exist out there, getting our community onto those DAO tools so we can like really see in a transparent way like what needs to be done and what we're going to pay for. And I think we need to pay people to set that up to help us like go to that next level as a DAO, and then both to be more effective, but also to acknowledge the work that is being done in the community. So I think there'll be some like resistance to this idea of centralization, like having a couple core people have more designated roles. But I think we need that, and we can have them elected or supported by the DAO and taking us to that next step, whether it's getting code ready for proposals, or it's getting a bounty board ready, or it's like having a weekly DAO blog. Like these are things that all have value, and we need to organize ourselves a little better to do it.
I completely agree. As a person that's always asking and unknowingly asking for bounties for video, I get it, and you guys should be compensated because this is real work, So definitely 100%.
And so Hefe and I are thinking about different ways to have some more formal structure for the DAO, and look forward to coming to the community with that. I think there's lots of different ways we can do it, but I think we need to in short, pay people, have some expectations and an accountability for what that means to be paid and to have these roles, and then to also have some deliverables that we can agree on, kind of like a DAO roadmap that we would like to focus on, and then we can have these people work on executing that and then be acknowledged for that work.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Jared says the first bounty, set up a bounty board with votable submissions that anyone can make.
Actually, that is something I'm working on with Notion. So that's one of my things that I'm kind of working on right now. Actually, is having a place where people can request funding and also look at what needs to be funded, and be an interface for communication between the DTF, what the DAO needs, and what people can do for the DAO, whether they're content creators, coders. So that's what I'm actually working on right now at the moment.
In terms of the structuring that you and I guess Hefe and Dr. Wagme have been discussing, can you go into some examples just so that we can kind of understand better?
I don't want to be super premature. I'm still working on this, thinking about it, getting feedback from the community. In short, kind of the way I'm looking at it is we have quite a bit of like internal data needs, right? Like whether it's the status of the wearables market, if we were going to turn off the curve, like what does that mean? Like what's all the data we need to make a decision that big? And then who's going to spearhead leading that? We have external needs, from like working with all the different stakeholders, all the different guilds, the arcade people, like who is kind of overseeing those, being a good resource to them, identifying if they need funding, if we funded someone, like how are they doing on following up on that. And then we have like the technical and solidity needs also. And so I kind of see it where we need at least like 3 leadership positions to help oversee that. And we're trying to have a construct where maybe we have a core of 3 people, but how does the community like fit in and continue to contribute and get paid for helping execute on those goals?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
I did draw something out earlier that I can share, and it's just really all it is an idea in a general sense, the way the DAO groups are now. Maybe it might give some ideas to how we can think about forming these groups and the different layers of engagement right now within the DAO and who those members could be. Let me just grab that right now, actually. But I like the idea of having, even though it would be central, it would be, from my understanding, a democratic process where these people there would be some sort of intervals or something. At some point, there would be extended structure. So if someone was interested in that position and there was an ability to rotate someone new in, we could do that.
Yeah, like Sushi Swap, probably not the best example, but they did have most of their leadership of the DAO was elected, I believe, by the DAO, right? There was that one guy, very toxic, I think. He eventually left Sushi Swap, but he was also elected by the DAO. So there is a precedent of DAOs electing leadership for the DAO.
And just looking at some feedback here, like I think part of the hard part of this, like needing very clear descriptions, identifying good candidates, like interviewing all of them, like it ends up being a lot of work, right? And it's hard. And this is something we tried to do with the DPM role, and we didn't really have the infrastructure to do that like super well. I think it was hard, and I think there were some community members that were hurt and offended by that process, and I really don't want to repeat that. So I think what we're trying to do is get some structure and get it paid and compensated for. And then also just to be sustainable, right? Like I feel burnt out by this work a lot. I know Hardcore has been feeling a little burnt out as well. And like how can we keep our core contributors in our ecosystem and ideally lose as few as possible? And hopefully if we create these roles that are successful, that external lead would identify, I really need someone to like help do what like DAO Gotchiverse gaming experience would look like whether that was quests or what it means to involve in the Gotchiverse from the DAO perspective, and then we could like have a way for people to step into that role.
I think the points you're making are very fair because, like, from my own personal point of view, like, I'm unemployed. We'll say unemployed, but I have all the time in the world to focus on the stuff that I do daily, my streams, all that. There's not a lot of strain for me. But if you're, as a doctor or as anyone with a real profession beyond just playing video games, having to add on additional like responsibilities that actually matter, like hiring and making sure that money's flowing to the right people and that things are getting done is a lot. And I could see how you guys are burnt out. So I definitely support any kind of motion to like organize and basically compensate so that you guys can do this and put the attention that you can put into it without killing yourself at the same time.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's a chart here I kind of put up. This is just something I kind of threw together, but it's a way to kind of differentiate maybe roles and responsibilities at every level in our DAO. If there's some alternative kind of ways people are looking at this, I want to know. I'm open to it, but it seems to me like there's different levels of engagement in our DAO. We have orbital members who could be asset holders and they never vote. They don't pet their gotchis. They hardly ever engage with the game, but they are investors. They own assets. Or they could be scholars and they don't own any assets, but they're involved with the actual game itself. They're participant. And now we have the observers who are even lower, another lower tier where they're just in the gotchiverse. That's it. So these are orbital people on the outside. And then you have these kind of more mantle, I call them mantle members, kind of like the different layers on the planet. There's different layers. So the mantle layer, these are people who vote. They'll attend hangouts. They're getting the XP. That's their primary motivation. And maybe they belong to a guild or some sort of other Web3 organization. They're in Web3 and, they very much enjoy being part of Aavegotchi and just they're on the sidelines. They're looking at what's going on and they're making sure they vote and they're engaged on that level. Then you have, these core members who I think everybody in here is kind of a core member in the sense that you guys are showing up to a Sunday. You're very involved with the DAO discussions. You're in the forums. You're posting. You're debating with people, even in the Aavegotchi Discord. And there's just some healthy discussion and engagement there. And maybe you even, create proposals. These are core members. They're creating proposals. And also, just being in the general loop of what's going on in our ecosystem. And these are some of the most engaged members in our DAO right now, are these core members. This is also where I see the highest potential for talent, to get talent paid and compensated, especially if they're doing specific things within the DAO. And so there could be positions created for specific core members that apply or get identified. And then you have project sponsors, and these are people who are going to be directly funded by the DAO, whether it's a guild working on a project, someone building a game, someone building a platform, someone building infrastructure for the DAO. They're all responsible for projects. These people might have their different scale sizes of projects. It could be one guy working on a video game. It could be 20 people working on a huge project, and it needs its own PM. So there could be a whole different range of scales of people that are involved there as project sponsors, and they would be directly getting funded by the DAO. That would be the main thing there. And then the core group, you can hardly see it there, but they are the, kind of going in with the lore of Aavegotchi, but they're the guardians. And these are people who are very, very involved with what we're doing here, more involved than project sponsors and more involved than core members, and they may have a specific skill set they're actually applying to developing the DAO or developing DAO relations with these projects. So they could be accounting, data analytics, coding, like we just mentioned, software development, AV design, anything like that, and they're directly applying their skill set to building the DAO. And then, they would be directly involved also. Some individuals like myself would be directly involved with interfacing with the project sponsors, to make sure things are being done on in a timely manner. The project plans being followed as it was initially laid out. If there's any changes that were made, and also to make sure that the funding is getting there and the feedback is fairly quick. So there's gonna be specific members, maybe just one like myself at the start, but maybe there's more later on. And then these people also will attend. I'm hoping amongst the guardians there be a pretty good communication, a tight knit group, and there be regular meetings and also working async. Sort of kind of what we see at GMI. There's a core group of members. We regularly meet up. We have our own admin chat, and we're always kind of keeping tabs on what we're doing because we are the core kind of group there. But that's just the way I kind of think of it in a general sense, and maybe we could get some ideas from this in terms of what these members do at every level and how we can get them more involved in the DAO and also compensated.
Have you considered or thought about the election process? I'm sure it's going to be, a core constituent will siphon through all the I guess applications and stuff like that. But specifically, like how we add a person, and then if there's going to be a term limit, or how do we remove a person? Those mechanics. Have you thought about those things?
Sorry, what
Yeah,
was
I think
that? Compensation? Is that what you were referring to there? Or terms?
Terms like the actual picking of the person, the if there's going to be a set term, and then how, if in the need to replace or remove someone, how we can do that.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things to unpack there. So as far as I think we should identify like what success would look like what our goals are as a DAO, and that would be like part of a proposal, right? Like let's hire 3 people, let's pay them this much. This is what we hope to succeed. This is like the time period we're going to commit to, whether it's 3 or 6 months. So I think the community would like have a good understanding of like what we're committed to, how much it's going to cost, and then what we're expecting to see at the end of that. And then ideally we would have like people apply, like be interested, maybe come to one of the DAO meetings on a Sunday, say like why they want the role that they're applying for, and then it would be a vote. As far as how to remove someone if it wasn't going well, we'd probably defer to the standard operating procedures that I wrote, which I think would be able to apply if we needed to remove or replace someone.
Okay, cool.
And then just, I see Cold Spirit talking a little bit about, why can't PC do this? I think the whole goal is to be a partner for Pixelcraft. The DAO and the Aavegotchi protocol is, separate from what Pixelcraft is doing and delivering. And obviously we're still in the cocoon stage where we do need a lot of support. That's very clear, but we want to get to the point where we can like truly be more autonomous, because we're not right now, but we want to be eventually. And I think we need formal infrastructure, ideally that comes from within, that really knows what's going on in our community and what our needs are. And I think we have the talent to identify them. We just need to connect them with some compensation and then some expectations and deliverables and go from there. But right now, I think what I'm arguing is like what we're doing isn't working and not effective in driving the DAO forward.
I agree with Dr. Wagney. You have like the Aave company or companies, however many entities they have, and then you have the Aave DAO, and the Aave DAO does have a lot of paid contributors, and the Aave company also does a lot of work on various features, but they work together. So I think that's what we are trying to achieve here. And if we never really start, we'll never end up getting anywhere. So I think it's a good time where while we're in the bear market here, kind of consolidate and work on our internals a little bit more and figure out how we can make this more of a partnership together rather than being one way and the DAO always having to come to Pixelcraft to do everything. It's just we can't. For us, like we don't want to hire every talented person in the community. That's not really how this we've envisioned this working, right? It seems like it's inefficient for us to do that because sometimes there won't be enough work for that person, but we've hired them probably have a contract with them. And also, I don't know, it's just it's not a good look on the optics side if Pixelcraft is just hiring everyone with talent in the community, because the whole point of this group and this organization is to be more decentralized. So yeah, we have to try and stick by those principles.
So I guess my question there would be, if we're going to be compensating, members for doing work, would it be, like we say, on a bounty basis for most of this work, or a contractual basis with a certain time, time limit or term limit, and that sort of thing? Or would it be more of a retainer for specific members? Like, how do we see the compensation being given out for work?
I can add my insights on this. So I think if we are going to contract someone, we need to pay them pretty well. And I think we need some contracted people to help us put together what bounties are and then what we think the bounties are going to be worth. One of the downsides of like contracting payment is I think that that's what that individual feels like the community has valued them at. And that can be concerning, right? Like if I only think you're worth 500 ghosts per week, like that doesn't feel great, right? Because a lot of what you've been doing for the DAO, a lot of what you've been contributing, you probably felt was worth more than that. But when we put money on it, on what it's worth, that kind of feels dangerous, right? I don't want people to not feel valued. Whereas a bounty system, I think we're saying this is what we think this specific contribution is worth, and you can pick up the bounty if you want, and that's putting less value on like the person and more value on the deliverable. So I think ideally we would see lots of bounties being picked up, but I do think we need some like formal infrastructure to help decide like what are we going to pay for that bounty, like what are we prioritizing, who's going to build and maintain the boards, and then who's going to provide like data to the system to help us make those decisions, or maybe even like if we need to pay for bounties all the time, that kind of sucks, right? But we could have someone that this is part of their internal lead job where they get data and present it to us, so we're not having like 7 open bounties. Like this is just what that person does every week. They're kind of on retainer. And I know similarly to that, there's multiple people in the Aavegotchi community that I've talked to that are interested in the tech lead role, that have solidity and front end knowledge. And so if we can get them and then pay them well, like I think everyone here needs to really understand we have to pay them to keep them because it's a valuable skill set. I think they're going to more than be worth that investment to take the DAO to the next step.
Yeah, I mean, the key word you say there also is investment. So, there's certain individuals where the return on the work that they're going to do or what they're going to build is going to provide in the future for the DAO, hopefully in some way or another. And so that is something to consider for like specific positions as well.
I think a retainer approach probably makes sense for positions that have consistent kind of repetitive work, such as an organizer of like more of like a meta position for actually handling all the incoming grant requests, bounties, like putting bounties out, kind of understanding the needs of the DAO. But for the actual work being done, sometimes it rains, sometimes it pours, sometimes it's a drizzle. There isn't always going to be a lot of, for example, design work or solidity work or marketing work, whatever, for like a community member or contributor. So I think a grant or bounty program works better for that type. But I think we will need some consistently paid members of the community that are handling kind of the back office work.
Question for I don't know if you guys have considered this yet, but let's fast forward a little bit. We get these community-based group of people. They're working coders. They're working on dev stuff that we want to implement. Have you guys thought about how what will Pixelcraft's role be in, like, I guess, auditing or checking that work, or will we have on the DAO side have to handle that? Because the idea is to kind of offload some of this work so we're more independent. But I feel like until we have like our own audit system, it'd probably be smart to have Pixelcraft look over any of the code that we put out. Not
Yeah.
we, but
It's funny. We wanted also, for us, we would love if there are community members checking our work as well. So it kind of goes both ways. And there have been some times in the past where community members have looked at our code on GitHub before it's even gone out and identified some areas that are that could be like bugs or bigger exploits. So the with the type of system that we have that is like upgradable contracts, it's fairly easy to do that. And so we probably would be able to have the bandwidth to help review some like the contracts that the DAO is writing. And at the same time, it would also be probably wise of the DAO at some point. It's not easy to do, but it would be wise to have a security budget in place where the DAO is actually hiring external auditors to look at the code that we're putting out.
That's that whole open source kind of approach, right? And it's, communities.
Yeah, there's a program Immunify that's like we're just from our perspective, if there is like a major vulnerability found that no one has somehow found up till now, obviously it's gonna like wreck the Pixelcraft budget. So because we're not extremely rich as a company now, like the DAO is definitely more well funded than we are at this point. Just because all the in Ghost, well, we're kind of probably equal in Ghost, but if they could take Ghost, that'd be awesome. But it would be tough. So the security budget, it would be great if it could be like split between Pixelcraft and the DAO, and then we could do like bug bounty programs together, where if there are issues found, it's not only Pixelcraft like having to dish out like 500K or whatever for a bug. Not that I think there are any left in the code. It's been pretty well reviewed and audited, but you never know. But I think yes, a security budget from the DAO would be a good investment.
That's great to know. Thank you.
And Solidity guys are not cheap. Dr. Wagner says 500 to 1,000 ghosts per week. Yeah, it depends on how many hours and their skill level and the level of work that we need them to do. Could be more than that, but that could be doable. But we never know until we have something set up and we put out applications and people from inside or outside the community can start applying. So it seems like the DAO kind of needs like an HR back office before we can really start getting in the swing of having these type of grants and bounties.
Yep, and I think that's what I expect us to have some proposal for the group. And it's a lot of work to like talk to like lots of people, to meet with them, like what their interest is, and then if they don't get hired, I don't want to lose these people from the community, so we need to do it in a really like professional way that respects the community. So look forward to more discussion on this. Hefe and I will try to put something forward, and
Yeah.
definitely want input from you guys on what success looks like and how the community would prioritize deliverables from DAO leadership.
Yeah, the other kind of pitfall is, and I think I probably don't think we would have this issue, but there is the possibility of when someone like puts a ton of effort into applying for something and then they don't end up getting it, even though they feel like they're very qualified, it can lead to some sort of burnout on that person, or feeling that they're underappreciated. So that's the kind of challenge with pulling talent from the community. And one of the also reasons why, as Pixelcraft, we find it difficult to hire members of the community or even take applications from members of the community, because we have done that in the past and it's usually worked out pretty well. But there can be situations where someone puts their heart into it and they're really set on getting it, and then we're just like, sorry, we can't hire you, and it actually ends up hurting their morale, and like they end up maybe becoming more distant in the community. So we definitely want to try and avoid that through this process.
Is there an opportunity there to fund or power specific groups? I mean, those groups would have to form because we don't have like we mentioned coders, right? We have a lot of technically inclined people in our community. Where's the community, like where's the Discord server that has all the people that are talking and interacting and actually have a community developed around that? I feel like if that was there, then it would make that a little bit easier of identifying where that funding could go without um, you know giving it to one person. Maybe there's a couple people that could take on a task and do it efficiently as a group, but we just don't. I think the ATF, people think the ATF is like a put together group, but it's a Discord server, and it doesn't really have a whole lot going on in there right now, to be honest. And maybe if we did have stronger communities around, the people are there. They just need to communicate. It's not like we don't have a community around this thing. They just don't talk to each other, and they're building their own thing, and they're not really worried about working with each other, and that's a big problem in my opinion. Like the reason why GMI has been successful doing what it's doing is because the people actually talk to each other and work with each other. That's the only difference. So if I would also say, as a community, if the technically inclined people who are building these amazing things, have had these really cool feats, like what Orium Guild's doing, what Gotchi Vault's doing, what Aavegotchi Stats has built. If all these people start communicating a lot better, we would definitely have a tighter knit group, and we would have a group of people to draw on as a resource rather than picking out individual people in our community. Although there's obviously room for specific individuals to take on, very defined tasks also. But I think we need that
I
too.
think one of the challenges also here is that this is like in our ecosystem, there's ways to make money by using your skills. So, like, you mentioned all those people who could work together, but it's also like, why would they if they can just have their own lane and make their own thing, and make their money that way? So, I guess finding those synergies will be important so that we can, almost like distract people from the free market, which could pay them a certain amount to come over here. Come on, work with us because this is the way. And then I wish, Yannick, if you have availability, if you can get up on stage, I would love to hear more about this. Focus on, forcing it on the guilds, getting them to do it. Because I mean, I'm not a guild guy, so I don't know how that would work, but it seems like an interesting idea.
That was definitely one of my initial, and yeah, Yannick, you're welcome to come up here also and share your thoughts. But that was definitely one of my initial kind of ideas with the project sponsors, is that we would have one person from every guild as a point of contact to interface with on the projects that they're working on, and they would also be funded, and their guilds would be funded for their projects. And so they would be like the central point of contact for whatever's going on with their guild. If it's Gotchi Bulls and they're working on that game that Ryder's working on, they would be the point of contact to interface with, and we would be providing funding to Gotchi Bulls, and they would manage that funding and fund Ryder's game and do all that, based on their plan that they presented to the DAO for funding. So that could be one way to get the guilds more involved. And yeah, exactly, and build a reputation around that also. The guild took the funding, they did X with it, and now they're generating a certain amount of yield on it, or they did a certain thing for the DAO that is now benefiting everybody. This is a way of highlighting guilds, and traditionally in these sorts of games, the guilds are the ones that get shit done. And I mean, traditionally in games, you're not building financial products and mini games and stuff, but what I'm talking about is the concept of guilds was created so that groups of people could work together and accomplish goals, and that's traditionally how guilds have functioned in games, including our game, just not so focused with the funding aspect, but it could be.
I think that as we think about this, I think we want to support guilds, right? And I think we want to be able to let guilds know like what the pipeline is to get funding, like if other people are doing similar work, like how can guilds benefit each other. And I think the idea for a DAO leader role would be to coordinate with those guilds to decrease the barrier for questions for funding. And I just think we'd benefit from having someone that serves as a resource from the DAO to these guilds to help them grow. because we want as many guilds and projects building on top of the protocol as possible, and that would be this person's job.
I mean, another thing I'm at. Sorry, I was just going to quickly mention another aspect I am working on with the Notion page is having a point of contact for every guild, and just having the projects, active projects that they're working on, could be funded or unfunded, listed under those guilds. And then we'll know what guilds are working on what projects and which guilds are the most active in our ecosystem.
Yeah, Yannick just said something. It's like also a guild equals small business inside the metaverse, and that was going to be the thing I just said. Was going to say rather, is that maybe we should reach out and talk to these guilds more. They clearly already have the organization, some of the bigger guilds too, to handle their DAO and like kind of delegate the work in a way that works for these guilds. There might be some good information that we can glean from them to help us with our own DAO and our own approach towards organization and getting things ready. For just like more decentralization and moving away from the Pixelcraft reliance that we have on currently.
Yeah, I agree.
We still got to focus on making sure we focus on what we need first before we dilute the DAO pool, though. I think we really need to focus on where that money's going specifically for the future,
I agree, but I also think that if we're too, if we hold on to that money too strongly and don't give it out to people and don't give them a chance to prove themselves with what they want to do, then it also might just really slow things down even more. A plan.
I just meant not to be too free, Hefe. You know what I mean? Just don't be, like the DAO has to have some mechanisms to make sure things aren't just getting wasted,
Yeah, I think that's going to be, having a plan and coming to the DAO with a plan and getting the funding for the plan, but then also having a sense of accountability, having someone to hold people accountable, and also having those people hold themselves accountable also is important. And some of these things, it might be based on trust initially, right? Like, we're not going to be giving out tens of thousands of ghosts to someone who we've never worked with. Maybe
could there be a way to like maybe stake part of their funding in order to, until they're, whatever they're actually doing for the DAO is complete?
Well, I mean, oftentimes when you get funding for a project too, you don't get all of the money up front. They're done in stages. So, what are you going to get done in the first iteration, and then the funding would be given for that. And then there would be a sense of accountability. And, that's where I hope to be in communication fairly regularly with the funded projects in our DAO, to at least get a pulse on where they're at and how close they are to completion, so they can get their next round of funding. That will be part of it.
I just worry, you know what I mean? There's always people out there trying to, get a little extra, get something by. You just got to be careful.
Yeah, I agree.
And I don't know if I agree with that. Like, this, like, people are going to try to steal our ghosts. Like, that's why we're going to elect people. Like, I think you have to set expectations, set a defined time period. And I think, like, all of these, like, extra, like, stake it until it's done, or like specific milestones, like, it's probably going to be a lot of work, right, to transition to where we can have the DAO write its own code that's included in the proposal and executes automatically. Like, the odds of that actually being done and ready in 3 months aren't super good. So we're not going to, like, not pay that person because they're halfway into it, right? So I disagree that we should have all these barriers. I am arguing the opposite, that we should pay these people and do it.
I didn't mean barriers, Dr. Regami. I just meant, definitely think everything out first. That's all. You know what I mean? That's what the DAO is for. But, I just hear a lot of.
We've been thinking for a while, though, and we haven't really gotten any significant action taken.
Yeah.
Like, we've been thinking on this for 2 years now.
And I think you're saying, like, you need mechanisms and we need to enforce it. Like, who do you think is making those mechanisms? I guess, like, who do you guys expect to make and enforce all the mechanisms?
Saying is we really need to concentrate on using the DAO funds to create those exact things that you're talking about, the things that we haven't been able to get in place, the things that aren't there. Make sure that, the money goes to we need, right? And not just diversified into a bunch of different avenues that if they fail, they don't really help us.
I mean, I think it starts with a plan, right? If someone comes to the DAO with a plan of what they want to do, and we know what they're capable of, I don't think it should be a very hard decision, especially if their ideas, offering some sort of value for the community. I think at this point would be maybe enough to have a good plan, a request for reasonable funding, and also be known well enough that you're going to execute on the plan, basically. So you're not just someone we don't know, never met, don't know what you're capable of. Like, that's where the guilds come in. That's where the guilds also come in, is they're able to vet their own members. They know who their active members are. They know what their members are involved with. They get to know each other over the time. So as far as reaching out within the community, I would rather reach out to a guild or someone who's associated with the guild and be able to talk to those members in the guild and know, okay, well, this guy's been around. He's one of your Solidity devs. He's built these things for you, and now he wants to do this thing for Aavegotchi DAO. Sure, let's do it. Let's get you the funding. Let's get your plan. Make sure your plan's all together and you haven't overlooked anything. And that's it. I don't think it should be that much more than that as far as our due diligence, as a DAO, right now at this point. With the amount of funding also, that scrutiny might go up a little bit. Like, if someone's asking for a huge, large amount, there might be like almost a feasibility study of the project. Is this gonna work or not? And then they get the funding. But if someone's asking for a couple thousand ghosts for doing something that might be really valuable to us, we also, going back to that initial conversation we had, we also don't want to be slighting people and making community members feel like they're not valued when the money is there to compensate them. So, yeah.
I mean, if I could speak personally, I'll be honest. Like when I got my DTF grant, rejected, I took that personally. Like I can speak to that, like honestly, because it sucked. I felt like I put in a lot of work, and I thought I had a vision. Maybe I didn't like clarify it enough. But I did, that did hurt. So I understand that point of view that you guys are seeing. That like you want to avoid that, but it like I think Action said it above. It is also kind of unavoidable, and we just have to kind of be adults in it.
Yeah, you can't be a pussy, right?
I won't say that, but yeah, we got to be adults.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think we can think of it as investment in our community members too, right? Like, Hefe, I think you're going to do a great job. Like, whether we keep this role around or morph it into like what we're talking about, like how can we invest in Hefe to build a skill set that's going to make you like a great long-standing leader in the project? And I hope we can do that with lots of leaders and lots of people in our ecosystem. And I think that has to start with investing in people like now. It probably should have already happened. And so we should do that. And I think we'll grow a really strong community. I'm optimistic about it. I think we just need to open our purse strings a little bit.
Yeah, and if you've been rejected, reflect on it. Don't let it bother you too much. Like it bothered me, but I doubled down. I put 10 grand into my streaming equipment, regardless of the grant, and I now stream twice a day. So I do it because I love doing this. It's not, so don't let it. If you love doing this and you get rejected, there's failure is part of success. There's no such thing as failure, only feedback. So just keep that in mind, friends.
Makes you stronger, or it crushes you.
In regards to the feedback aspect too, that's something I hope I can do better than, just do a better job of it in general, where if a proposal does get rejected, to be able to look at the proposal and say, well, it got rejected because of these reasons, and maybe there's a chance to just reiterate on that, like change that proposal so it makes sense, and then you do get the funding. So I don't think getting your proposal rejected should be like the end of the line for that idea. Maybe there's a potential to change a couple things, and then it does get passed. And so be able to provide better feedback is also something I want to work on, and hopefully that gets some of these rejected proposals converted into funded proposals. So I see Tommy Gachi's tag means.
Yeah, I tagged you, FA. So Coder Dan brings out a good point. I'm suggesting for the technical tasks needed to be done here in the short term, that it would be beneficial if you could kind of hash out a structure for the technical requirements doc, and I can help fill that in, and we could hopefully find people in the community that might help tease out the requirements. For instance, expanding the voting power queries for Snapshot. CoderDam brings up a good point. Hey, there's a whole Snapshot Discord that we could probably tap into, and also the respect potion. If we have a structure for a technical doc, and these technical requirement docs have a Aavegotchi DAO structure, then it might be easier to fill these things out, and then allocate a reward for these, and we can kind of start that rubber hits the road process of what documents need to be produced in order to get us down the road of actually getting code written. That's kind of my 2 cents on that.
Like a process for implementing code, like DAO related.
Like a technical PM almost. They would be reading ideally whoever is creating the proposal would chat with the technical PM, someone who is pretty aware of the code and the limitations and what needs to be done. They would say, hey, I want to implement this spec potion. Like, what does that involve? And then the technical PM would say, oh, well, you're going to need some solidity. Here's generally where we can do it. So this is what we need to tell the coder. And we're also going to need to do probably on the UI side, probably we'll end up doing that at least for V1 until V2 is open source. But which brings up the other thing I wanted to mention, that V2 will be open source. And so that's also, if we want community contributors to be helping with that, that would also be super cool in having an open source front end that's managed by, on our side, we can help with the PRs and review them, but also like community members can contribute. So that would also kind of go through like more of a technical PM kind of process.
Yes, and kind of the bare bones logistics from the technical lead would be, here's the spec, it's in this GitHub repository. Hopefully we'll have a DAO code repository, and it would list the kind of the bounties, I guess you would say, and then there would be a requirements doc. So the biggest thing from the coding perspective, engineering perspective, is how does the coder know it's done? How does it know it's done? And so there's like, what is the exit criteria for the task? And then it would be a lot easier for the DAO to verify that the task was actually completed, and kind of wrap it up and allocate payment and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just suggesting, Hefe, to kind of carve out where does all that live, that kind of thing. And does that make sense, Hefe? Not actually fill out the technical aspects, but just kind of setting it up.
To have a database, you mean?
And then I'd say just put it in GitHub. That's my default. I'm a developer. All my shit goes in GitHub. I'm an open source developer, that kind of thing. So I could help you fill out some technical details for the kind of the voting power thing, and also the respect potion. And I don't have the whole picture in my head, so we could try to find people that fill in these details in order to get ready to find candidates to actually do the task.
I see what you're saying here. I kind of look back to also Dr. Wagme's suggestion initially with multiple different positions. I know there was a more I don't know, it's way up there now. If Dr. Wagme can post those 3 kind of ideas he had, one of them would be someone who would be able to do that. What I would like to do is take what you suggested and put that into the Notion page, so it is part of that public facing interface where someone can go there and have access to those technical docs. Even if it lives on GitHub, that would be the place to access them, because I know there's probably non-technical people that might want to see it, and they might not really be too familiar with GitHub. But if they can go to like a front-facing web page that has everything, a Miro board, an access to these documents, access to databases, access to a list of point of contacts for all the guilds. It would be a central place for people to actually get all this information, and that's kind of my goal, is to get everything in a central place where you don't need to look. It's all there. Even the ability to get a form automatically filled out for a proposal, having that show up in like an inbox, like that's easy. That makes things easy for someone to monitor and look over, and to give quicker
Yeah.
feedback on those things.
Yeah, what I'm saying is basically a paper trail kind of thing. So for the tech spec, which Dr. Weigman is indicating, like the Solidity lead would fill out. It's kind of the process thing. So if you want the Solidity lead to show up and fill out an artifact, where does that artifact live? What's the structure of that artifact? And I think you could contribute in that, since you're organizing kind of the high level big picture thing.
Yeah, I think it's a good
Yeah.
idea.
So Hefe, you as a project manager, you could be like, hey, tech, hey, Solidity lead, whatever. Here, we need this filled out. We need technical details for a task. Put it all here in this document in GitHub or wherever. And then they know exactly what they need to do. They don't get lost. They don't get distracted. They're like, okay, I need to go to this document in GitHub. I need to fill this out because we need to set a number of ghosts to the task and then go find candidates to write it down. And from a management perspective, say the role you're in, you're strategically placed to be able to basically build walls on tasks and say, hey, we need a specific person to come here to this document and fill this out. Who's willing to do that? Because it's a lot easier to get people to fill out a document, like a very specific task, than kind of a vague notion of we need some lead to kind of, corral these kittens and all that kind of stuff. Does that make sense?
No, I mean, I'm a little bit confused. So, I mean, explain the scenario. Someone comes to me, they have a project, there's some technical aspect to this project, and then they need to fill out a form. I just don't know.
I'm saying as an example. So 2 tasks, which I've thrown out there. We need the snapshot voting power queries extended. So it'll only include WAP Ghost and the LP tokens. Well, that's a task. The DAO is willing to pay money for that. What's missing is the technical details of that task. And we haven't found that person yet. But if FA managing projects, this task needs to be done, the DAO is going to pay for it. Where does the technical specification document live? And so I suggest FA goes, and you go and say, hey, I'm going to create this template for this particular task, and we need technical details in it so that we can go find candidates to actually write the code. And then, for instance, you might say, hey, I want to put all these tech specs in Notion, or you put them in GitHub, or you put whatever. And then once that document, the structure of it is put, the template is put there, then we can go and find who we need that has the technical details to write the spec. And then we could say, oh, it's worth 1,000 ghosts or whatever. Then we can go find the actual coder to update snapshot to extend the voting power. Does that make sense? It's kind of a flow thing, management.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I mean, the way I would envision it is someone would come to me with that. I would take that information, go to the Solidity lead, say, hey, look, this is what we got. We would talk about it, and then hopefully there would be a community of people we could reach out to that are known coders in our community that have that technical knowledge, and just literally go to that group and say, hey, from this group, who's interested in this? And then we would kick it off, right? I think that's the way I would see it happen.
Oh, okay. Well,
I think I agree with Tommy. I think you need, it's like a Web3 kind of product manager who is aware of kind of, maybe they're not themselves able to code it, but they understand a little bit of Solidity, a little bit of like Web3 code, Ethers.js, a little bit of JavaScript, subgraph. This is basically what I do in Aavegotchi. I'm kind of the overall PM, right? Because
Mm.
I'm familiar with all those tech, and that's why we're able to have various teams working on things, and I can kind of review them. But that's a very key role to have kind of in our company, and probably in the DAO would also be very useful to have a person that is able to do that. Maybe not all four, but yeah, a cider Dan light. Maybe not all four of those key aspects, but at least like Solidity. Typically, you can find someone who's pretty aware of Solidity and like Web3 and JavaScript. Maybe not Subgraph, but at least the other three.
Well, I can give a stab at it. Let's just put me in there to kind of help get the process going. I'm a full stack developer for an L1 blockchain company, and for 4 years I was a Web3 developer on a open source project. Anyway, I got plenty of experience, so I can help out writing tech specs structure, and then we can just kind of get the ball rolling. It's kind of my thing. So I would say, Hefe, tell me where to put the tech spec document, and I'll build a framework kind of thing that we can kind of move forward and kind of hash out and iterate on.
Yeah, where it lives is something I could definitely, I definitely could help with that. Finding a place
Probably
where
on
it lives and
Notion.
it's accessible.
Okay, cool. And then I'll take a stab at those two that I put out there, 2 tasks that I put for the snapshot extension and the tech spec. I'm definitely not a Solidity dev, but I have a pretty good idea at least how to tease it out. We can, while we look for a tech lead that has Solidity experience.
Thanks for stepping up, man. That's awesome.
So that would be the DAO should be paying that person for their expertise. Ideally, everyone who's using their expertise should be receiving some sort of compensation from the DAO, in my opinion. None of this like pro bono stuff is great when you're kind of working your way up the skill ladder, but at some point, we're not a fledgling DAO anymore. We have a budget, and we want to get hard work done, and that kind of hard work is like typically people can't dedicate their hours unless they have some sort of compensation for it. We're all hustling, all grinding.
Well, I agree, and also payment puts people on the hook. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
yes,
exactly.
pay me, put me on the hook. That's the way for me to get work done. Is I need to be on the hook because I got a lot of shit going on. But I want to get the ball rolling.
And to hear something like that it's so awesome to see all these talented community members willing to throw their energy into this. Absolutely, they should be compensated. We should also consider ourselves fortunate during this bear market to have so many individuals that want to do stuff. And so maybe the best thing to do is find ways to empower them. And when someone like yourself, Aavegotchi, says I can do this, like just give it to me. I want to give it a shot. Definitely, I think we should acknowledge those individuals, because we don't want to create any more apathy in the DAO than we already have had. So I think it's the right time to start, like you say, getting the ball rolling.
Yeah, we'll talk. I gotta run, but we'll talk and get these 2 things written this coming week. At least hash out, at least identify where we might need more technical proficiency and building a requirements doc. But this week we should get at least 95%. So we'll talk. You tell me where to put docs.
I think we can leverage the DTF's current infrastructure to pay you too, right? Like this would be a bounty of sorts, and we would say, we want this to be done. We know Tommy's going to do it, and we'll use DTF budget to do that. I think that's something we can do in the future, is if we had those 3 leads, right? You give them a budget and they say, we know we need this, we're just going to pay. And then you don't have to go through a full DAO process to pay someone. I think that's part of what we need is the infrastructure to pay each other for their work. Because like right now, if I just arbitrarily decide to pay you, right, I get accused in this community by people like here of like doing things like unilaterally, and that sucks. So that's also part of what we need is how we do this and how we pay each other. But I think we can use the DTF for the time being, at least, to do it.
Yeah, that works. You could pay me in Alchemica.
Well, this has been a really productive conversation, and I think we should all touch base up here, Tamigotchi, Dr. Wagme, on sort of the deploying funding in the right places right now, getting some people on board that are willing to help us like build out some of these initiatives, and then also I'll be reaching out for integrations and getting specific things, put onto this hub that I'm kind of trying to build out for the DAO. So, yeah, do you guys have anything else to add in terms of where we should be moving forward right now? Who we should be specifically funding, or specific positions that you might want people considering?
Does this only happen when the curve gets turned off, or is this something that's happening either way?
What?
I think this is completely independent of
Yeah.
the curve discussion, is how we structure ourselves as the DAO. And for a really big decision, it would be nice to leverage solid structure.
So having the curve turned off, basically, you're saying it makes it easier to do what we're talking about?
No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying we need to organize as a DAO and have better infrastructure. And the curve discussion is separate, but any serious decision will benefit from having a strong, organized DAO.
Yeah.
Cool, friends. Yeah, that was a great discussion, and looks like we made some progress on that. So I think it's really excited for the potential of how we can use this budget and really empower some of our community members to help move this thing forward. We are already the most active DAO in terms of snapshot. We just need to get a little bit more skilled at the compensation part and actually having the DAO implement more that it wants to do.
Robot Dan. I'm also going to have to hop off. Guys, go take care of my child. But I really appreciate the community.
Take it easy. Thanks for all the great input.
Yeah, it was a good conversation. Next week I'll reach out to Moon. I'll get in touch with him for that, and we can talk about the actual bonding curve discussion that we've had going on right now. But yeah, I'll be touching base with some people this week, and this was a very productive conversation. Thank y'all for all 68 or 70 people that were here with us hanging out. Thank you for coming out and participating in the biggest DAO, I think, by participation. So pretty epic, actually. We're making strides. We just need to kick it up a notch and take it to the next level now. Nice.
Yeah, 69. We got there.
Nice.
Yep. All right. I'm going to hop off too, friends. Have a great Sunday, and we'll see you guys at the rarity farming call. And just
have a great day. Or
if
night.
you're available later in the evening, we'll be doing the Gotchi Spaces 7 p.m. Eastern, and we can discuss some of this and whatever else you want to talk about. I'll see you guys later.
Peace.
Peace out, friends. Don't forget Thursday. Later.